Hi, welcome to this mini class of Introduction to Vedic Astrology with me, Zia. So, my intention in creating this mini class is so that when you listen to your Vedic astrology reading with me later, then you're not going to get too overwhelmed with the so many new information and terminology that I might share with you, because some of the fundamental aspect, including some new lingo, new terminology that you might never heard before, we're going to cover that in this mini class, so that later when you listen to it, you can have better understanding about Vedic astrology and your chart. Okay, now let's get into it. Let's first talk about what is Vedic astrology itself and what's the benefit. So the real word of Vedic astrology, when I say it by the real word, is actually what's the original name is Jyotish, from Sanskrit, and that means the science of light. And just like light, the purpose of that is to give us some clarity so that we can see things better. Imagine you're walking in the night, it's dark, there's no source of light, and not only maybe you can fall, you might trip yourself. It might be scary. You might get lost because you don't know which road to take. But if you have a source of light, it can help you to see things better, and then you can see which road that is best to take, for example, or you can also see in the future if there's some obstacle, challenging path, let's say, that you might go through, then you can prepare yourself. Okay, now let's talk about some of the difference between Vedic and Western astrology, because I know that Western astrology is more familiar for people. And because there are some fundamental difference between Vedic and Western, I don't know if you know about that yet. So just in case you didn't know about that yet, so let's talk about it. So the first and most important difference between Vedic and Western is the planetary placement. So for example, if let's say someone who was born in Western astrology, let's say for this person, okay, she was born with Sun in Taurus in Vedic astrology, but in her Western astrology, she has her Sun on Gemini. Now, this difference of the planet is because every 72 years, the Earth wobble or move in its rotation, which that movement creates changes of position between the position of Earth and then the planet and the stars around it for 1 degree. And they say that because astrology, quote unquote, founded around 2000 years ago, now the changes of the Earth and the planets around it is now already reached to 24 degrees, because 2000 divided by 72 years is around 24. And because one zodiac sign is 30 degrees, so these 24 degrees different, oftentimes it makes planet goes one sign backward. Not always. So let's say I notice like on online, some astrologer often say like, oh, if your sign in Western is Gemini, then in Vedic astrology is Taurus. But now, as I already explained just now, it's not always like that. Oftentimes it's like that, but I also often see like it's not always entirely changing the entire zodiac sign. It might still be in the same zodiac sign, just different degrees. Okay. And of course, it's not just only the sun sign that moves. So, for example, for this person, her sun sign, oops, sorry, let me pull up my pen. There you go. For her, in Vedic astrology, this is her Vedic astrology chart, by the way. Her sun sign is in Taurus, but of course, in her Western sign, it moves 24 degrees forward, and that is in Gemini. Now, me coming from Asia with Asian background, it's also interesting to see how Vedic astrology, which is based on the Eastern philosophy, um, differ to Western astrology that a lot, in my opinion, reflect is Western mindset. So in Asia, at least where I grew up, we have a deep understanding and belief that our life isn't just ours, that we're here for something bigger and larger. That is why it's all about sharing with other people in our community. And I feel like this is often this is so reflected in the Eastern astrology itself, where this position of the planet reflects the real-time position of the planet in the sky. Now, on the opposite end, Western astrology, why the position of the planet stay as it is, because it's seeing things as if the Earth is the center of the universe. Like if the Earth doesn't move, and the planet and the stars is actually the one who revolves, they're the one who revolves around Earth, it is true. The planet doesn't change from 2000 years ago until today. But of course, that's not the truth, right? And so that's why it's interesting to see that, in my opinion, because Western astrology also reflect Western mindset that is all about me. My life is about myself. Whatever I want, it's all about freedom, what I want, because the world revolves around me. And that's why I feel like there's some connection between Western astrology and Western mindset that is all about freedom, while the Eastern astrology also represent the Eastern mindset where I am not the center of the universe. People doesn't revolve around me. In fact, I realized that I have a strong connection with the people around me, my surrounding, and that's why there is a deep understanding and a deep importance for me to fulfill my role in the society. That yes, in some way it's true that I have freedom, free will to create a life that I want. At the same time, whatever I do, everything that I do will also impact the people around me, and that's why it's important to understand the bigger picture of the universe that I'm a part of. Okay, now let me just delete this first. Okay, the second difference is that in Western astrology, they're usually very heavy on the sun placement. So for example, for this person, she will be quote unquote called as Gemini because the sun sign is in Gemini. Of course, nowadays people are also familiar with rising sign and your moon sign as well. But I noticed that the way they interpret rising sign, for example, between Vedic and Western, there's some differences there. And just overall reading, the way they read it is quite different. Although I notice at the end, sometimes there's a lot of similarities. But in Vedic astrology, we don't emphasize the importance, I would say, of sun sign as much as how Western astrology see it. In fact, in Western astrology, what we see and what we put as the most important sign is actually the rising sign, or another name of it is ascendant, and also the moon sign. Okay, so for example, for this person, her rising sign is Cancer. ASC is the abbreviation of ascendant, or another name is rising sign, and her moon sign is here in Pisces. Okay, now the difference is, from the perspective of Vedic astrology, rising sign or ascendant will represent deeper about who that person is. Okay, I often call it, this is to understand your body, your vehicle, because ultimately, yes, we have a soul that lives within, but at the same time, to understand who we are at this lifetime, then we need to understand this Cancer, the vehicle that our soul, quote unquote, use right in this world right now. And the moon sign then will represent our emotion, our feeling, and the reality about the experience, how we feel in the inside about the experiences that we go through in the external world. Okay, now let's clean that again. The next one that then we need to talk about is, of course, the birth chart itself. Now, earlier I mentioned that Jyotish is basically the eye, the one that help us to see things clearly. That's why Vedic astrology also known as the eye of the Vedas. And then the next question is how Vedic astrology can give us some clue, can make us to see things clearly, and that is through our birth chart, which you're looking at right now. We already talked about the rising sign, moon sign. That's two of the most important aspects about our birth chart that can help us to see things clearly about ourselves, about our life. But of course, there are so many other things, including the planet, the houses, which we're going to talk about today in this mini class and the other aspect. Okay, now this birth chart shape because of her birth date, which I'm sure you're already familiar, but also her birth time, hour, and ideally to the minute, and also where she was born. Okay, now in Vedic astrology, we have many charts. Now on the left side is called D1 or Rashi chart. This is your main chart, I would say. And then on the right side here, as an example, there is D9 or Navamsha chart. And this is one of the quote unquote divisional chart. That's what they call it. Or I personally call it, this is like the add-ons of your chart if you want to go deeper, to understand deeper into certain aspect of life. For example, D9 or Navamsha chart, it can tell us about our life when we reach 40 years old. And this is also sometimes not sometimes, depends on the age of the person. It's also get activated when the person got married, for example. And D10 is going deeper about career. So this is what makes also Vedic astrology when it comes to prediction and also going deeper into your life. It can offer more depth and more detail because of this as one of the reason. Okay, and of course there's also another thing called nakshatra on this software website that I use, and that is Cosmic Insight. And by the way, you can also have all of these details on your phone. You can just download it. Cosmic Insights is free. You can see all the details, your birth chart, and then if you scroll down, there's also the nakshatra. So before we go into the nakshatra, let's talk about the planet first and what's the role of the planets in our birth chart. Because if we just talk about the typical style that is just common on the media about astrology, they just focusing on the sun sign. But of course, if we dig deeper, we need to talk about the planets, because ultimately these planets will tell us about the karma or the lesson that we bring here into this world. So one of my teacher often call this planet like a bank. For example, we have different banks: Jupiter bank, Venus bank, Mercury bank. And then in many lifetimes that we have, like say some banks, let's say we make deposit, but also maybe we owe money to them. And then if we have a debt with planet, there will be a time where we need to pay for it. So this planet, basically, they record everything, every free will that we did in the past, whether it's quote unquote good or bad deed. At some point, everything that we deposit, everything that we plan will give some fruits. So when we look into this planet in our birth chart, in which house, in which zodiac sign, it gives us a sign on the lesson that we bring from the past to this lifetime. Okay, and of course, different planet will talk about different things. We will talk about that in your birth chart, because if we talk about this in this, it will be too long. But it's just I just want to give a brief introduction about why it is very important, and because of that, we will talk about this in your reading, to talk about the planet and the role in your birth chart. Okay, now the next one, of course, we need to talk about the zodiac sign, but we don't need to talk more about this because I'm sure this is very familiar. The zodiac sign, there are 12. The first one is Aries, and then the last one is Pisces. It represents, in a way, a cycle of life and an example of how human actually grow and evolve from Aries, which is all about free will, which is about power and how I want to exert my power into this world, because this is the first sign when soul just come into this world and like, wow, I have a body and I'm curious, what can I do with this body? So that's why people with Aries rising sign or moon sign, usually they're very goal-getter. Okay, now, so basically each zodiac sign will have its own character and personality. So if there's certain planet, and especially if there is rising sign or moon sign sitting in that zodiac sign, we can tell a lot about that person because of the zodiac sign where the rising on moon sign or the moon sign sits. And then the next principle in Vedic astrology is called the 12 houses. Now, these 12 houses represent the 12 areas of human life. Now, for this person, for example, her first house is in Cancer. So first house, I'm sure you'll be familiar with. First house is another name for rising sign or ascendant. Okay, and the first house is the house of the body. So this is representing you, your body. And then with this chart that I have, and I'm using the South Indian chart, to know the second house, the third house, we go clockwise. Now, thankfully, for this software, for this app, there's already a number, so it's easy to know where is the second house. So the second house is here in Leo. Now, this is actually also the cycle of the 12 houses represent the journey of life as human. Okay, so first house is a house of you, your body, and then you were born basically into this world. And then after that, you learn about the second house matter. Now, the second house is about money, parents, but what it really telling, the deeper aspect of this is about security. How can I feel secure in this world? Because once you were born, you know that, oh, I have a body. I'm not just, soul floating around, but now I have this physical body. And then to survive, apparently as human, I need money, I need food, and that's why second house also related with food. And I need to maintain my relationship with my parents, especially when you were little. You can't survive on your own. And so second house also related to our relationship with parents and the karma that we have with them. Okay. And then after that, we progress with the third house matter. And third house is about communication and sibling as one of it. So you learn that, okay, now I create security, I have good relationship with my parents. Oh, apparently now I have sibling. So there is another subject, another things that I need to learn and deal with. Okay, how can I feel secure still with my parents, with my relationship with my parents, and my survival with the existence of my sibling, for example? Oh, apparently the key of that is to be able to communicate my needs, is to be courageous, to speak up for my truth. That's what third house, and sometimes also third house often related to errands, travel, but specifically short distance travel. Okay. And then after that, you go to the next evolution, the fourth house, the house of the home, whether a home like physical home, right? Or also home, internal home, like your emotion, how you can feel at home, how you can feel belong in yourself. And it is also related to your mother, because in a way, we used to live there for like around 9 months. So after we learn to communicate our needs, our thoughts to other people, then how can I feel at home in myself now? I think I cover my basic needs. I project myself to the world by communicating what I need. And then after having all of those things, then how can I feel at home in me? Because just because I have money doesn't mean I can actually feel at home and at ease in myself. Okay. And then after that, the next ones, you go to the fifth house matter. Now, fifth house is all about having more fun. So you have security in your life, you have good relationship with the siblings, and you're able to communicate your needs. You feel at home in yourself. And then let's have fun. Let's enjoy life, whether it's in romance, whether it's doing some hobby that you have, but how can I bring more joy and fun in my present life? Then after that goes to the sixth house matter. And the sixth house is about hard work. You learn that after you enjoy and have fun, you learn that, whoop, actually, there's some responsibility that I need to fulfill in life. Responsibility with my health, first and foremost, because if I don't have a good health, then I'm not going to be able to enjoy more of life. And then apparently not everyone have the same perspective and alignment with how I want to enjoy life. So how can I deal with differences and disagreement? And of course, six house of hard work. You need to work. Like, you still need to put some work in life so that hopefully you can sustain that fun, that house that you have, and then a sense of security in your life. Okay. Now, interestingly, the fifth house I quickly mentioned is all about romance as well. So let's say you meet someone interesting, someone that brings spark and joy to you. But of course, it's not just about all rainbow and butterfly, at some point you learn that there are some differences. That's also what sixth house, differences, disagreement that you might have with your lover. But if you're able to go through that difficulties, disagreement, then the next phase you go through the seventh house matter, and seventh house is about partnership. So that is why when I usually give relationship reading, we need to talk about the seventh and the fifth house, because that's the natural progression from romance to commitment to partnership. But before we go to from fifth house to seventh house, of course, we need to go through the sixth house matter, and that is about finding a way where we can deal with our differences, because that's part of human experience. Okay, but of course, after you create some partnership, whether it's romantic or business partnership, then you go through the next cycle, and that is the eighth house. Now, the eighth house is all about transformation. It's about death as well. So at the end, our partnership needs to come to an end or needs to transform. So death doesn't necessarily always mean our lover, our partner, our relationship will die. They will die, and then we need to separate from them. It can be also means that there's some way in the way we relate with them needs to end, so that a new things can emerge. That's what the eighth house is, basically the house of transformation. If people have a lot of karma in the eighth house, most likely their life experiences will predominantly about growing and burning and then growing again and burning, just like phoenix. It needs to burn to ashes first, so that then it can finally grow and fly again. Okay, and then after that you go through the ninth house, and ninth house is the house of wisdom, because after you go through this death and transformation experience, you will gain the wisdom, you will gain the knowledge, and maybe that's when you are ready to have the right teacher. That's what ninth house as well, the house of teacher, because they said the teacher will come when the student's ready. So maybe you need to go through this transformative experience first, so that you are ready, you are worthy of the knowledge, the wisdom, the teacher that then will come into your life. And then after that, after you have the wisdom, then you go to the next cycle, and that is the 10th house. And 10th house is the house of public image. So people then look at you into with a certain image. Let's say that they see you as someone who is knowledgeable, hopefully, if you go through this phase properly. um, Someone who is knowledgeable, someone who is strong, for example. Of course, we all want to be perceived in a good way by other people, and maybe through that then we also get certain career, because oh yeah, I had that experience with that, and from those experiences that you had in the past, it can support your career in some ways. Okay, then after that, go through the 11th house. You realize that just because this is my career, it doesn't mean it's something that I want to do in the long term. And that's what 11th house is, the house of your dreams. What do you want to do for the long run? Maybe by, pursuing your quote unquote dream that is related to the 11th house, maybe in the short term, you don't get the result as quickly as you want. But 11th house will give that gain, will give that satisfaction in the long term. 11th house also related to the money, the gain that comes from the career, comes from the image that you have in the society. And it is also about your friends, which is why, let's say, as simple as from the career that you have, from how people perceive you, then you will attract certain people. You'll be in circle of friends, certain circle of friends that then come naturally because of certain career or status that you have in the society. And of course, last but not least, part of the cycle is coming to an end again, the 12th house, the house of spirituality. And this is the ultimate house of spirituality, because this is where everything finally come back to the source. And so oftentimes people who have a lot of karma in the 12th house, usually their life will be very spiritually oriented. Maybe they go through a lot of ending and separation in their life. And if that's the case, then that's actually a reminder from universe that life is impermanent and we can find joy still, even when by not being attached to it. And of course, after we go through that, then we will be born again and start the whole thing all over again. Okay, now let's clean this first. Okay, now basically, if we have in our birth chart certain planets concentrated in certain house, it shows that our karma related to that house, this is the word that I use, is thicker. Or for example, like if life is like a school, a university, okay, and then each house represent different subject of life. So for example, for this person, she has a lot of planet in the 11th house, in the 9th house, right? Shows that these two subject has the most credit than any other subject, which is why this needs to be the priority in some way, because she will attract that. There's a lot of karma that she bring from the past in regards to these two areas, for instance. Okay, now let's see. We already talked about the meaning and the benefits of Jyotish, the difference between Vedic and Western astrology. And then we talk about the birth chart itself, the 12 zodiac sign, even though we don't go deeper into that. That's gonna take a whole lot time, and there's a lot of information out there in the world. We talk about the 12 houses, and then let's talk about the planet itself and the planetary period to close this session. So in Vedic astrology, we only, for reading personal birth chart, we only focus on the 9 planets. So we don't count Uranus, for example, we don't count Neptune and Pluto in the personal birth chart. We do read this for like overall like generation, because they move very slow, or when we want to predict the world state, for instance. Although even that, not all Vedic astrology do that, because this is called outer planet. And so for me personally, later when I do the reading for your birth chart, I'm not going to read the Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto for your birth chart itself. Okay, so we only focusing on the 9 graha, I call it. But by the way, I often like mention like the 9 planets, because in Vedic astrology we use the word graha from Sanskrit, which means something that has a grasp on us, which then if you loosely translate it, it means planet, but of course it includes the moons, the sun itself, and basically each planet have their own role in our birth chart. They represent certain areas of our life, and then certain planet will rule different zodiac sign, and also it has some exaltation or debilitation point at this stage. Don't worry about that, so that it doesn't overwhelm you. But in the reading that I will do this for you later, then I will share, I will mention about, for example, this person, the ruler is Cancer, and Cancer ruled by Moon, because Moon rule Cancer. That's Moon's house, and Moon is here in Pisces in the 9th house. So then I will explain what's the meaning having the ruler of the first house in the 9th house. Okay, and lastly, I want to show with you a planetary period. 1 second. So this is a principle that only exists in Vedic astrology. It's called Dasha. Dasha means planetary period. Now in Vedic astrology, there are many different type of Dasha, but what I'm using is Vimshottari Dasha. So to explain it in simple term, basically this is your life timeline. So in Vedic astrology, they say that we can live up to 100 years. Even in Ayurveda, the sister science of Vedic astrology, we can live up to 100 years healthy if we eat the right food, have the right lifestyle and everything. Living until 100 years old is like guarantee. It's easy healthily until that age. That is why in Vedic astrology, it's also reflected that in the planetary period, we can see the cycle until around 100 years old. Okay, so basically, each of this period will represent certain planet, which what is trying to tell us hinting, signaling for us is that during this period, so for example, this person is currently in moon period. So from around September 2021 until September 2031, the karma that is related to moon will be the most dominant. Okay, so the analogy to understand this better is, imagine in the past you plant many different type of seeds. Okay, you plant mango, you plant chili, and let's say you also plant something bitter. I'm not sure, bitter gourd, for example. Now, different seeds will take different time for it to finally grow and mature and give its fruits. Now, same with our action that we did, with our free will that we did in the past. Every karma will at the end, it will come back to us again. We will reap the reward. We will get the reward of whatever that we planned in the past. But the timing, now this is what this planetary period is trying to tell us. Okay, so by understanding, for example, oh, during this period, until this period, we're gonna harvest something very sweet. So let's make the most out of this period. Okay, and maybe we even plan it back again so that in the future we can have more of this sweetness. But let's say if we know this period that is going to come is quite bitter. And because of that, let's make sure that we are not going to plan it again accidentally or for whatever reason, so that we can have more sweetness in the other areas and be free from this bitterness. Okay, and of course this cycle has many layers to it. It's called the sub-cycles. So for example, for this person, she's currently in moon Mars, coming to an end soon. So moon, in her garden of life, moon is the tree that gives the most fruit at this stage, and Mars is the quote unquote tree that gives the second most fruit. So which is why she needs to take care of these two more than any other planet. And that's how in Vedic astrology we use this planetary period system to predict the future. So instead of we getting confused about all the planetary movement, because planet moves all the time and that can be overwhelming, we can just focus on first some important planetary period, because that planet will give the most reward, will sing the loudest. And then if there are some planetary transit that we know this is very important, for example, it transit in our moon sign, rising sun, or let's say the planet come back to its own position when we were born, then we know we also need to focus and emphasize on that. So that's everything from me in this class. I hope that helps, and I hope that's not too overwhelming so that the information that you receive in this mini class, you can use it for the next session that I'm about to give you. Okay, so I'm wishing you all the best. Stay safe and healthy and have a great day. Bye.